Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is James Jacobs. I'm the Head of Accessibility at Jadu, and I'm joined by my colleague, Catriona. Catriona, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Catriona, an accessibility specialist here at Jadu, so supporting James, the wider teams and our customers in auditing, training and advocating for accessibility as we aim to make our products and services as accessible as possible. Back to you, James.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So this session is titled Building a Culture of Accessibility, Our Journey. And it's really a summary of how we have shifted left and embedded accessibility into everything that we do. We'll cover what's worked for us kind of along the journey and what lessons we've learnt along the way as well. It's worth noting that we're very much still on this journey. We don't have everything right, but we are kind of aiming for the stars when it comes to how far we can take both the cultural aspect of accessibility, but also the accessibility of our platform. So a little bit about Jadu then to kind of set the scene. So the first question I'm normally asked is what does Jadu mean? It's an ancient Sanskrit term, and it means to affect change by magic. So as a company, we're super passionate about accessibility, and we have been since we were founded all the way back in 2001. And that passion has certainly intensified over the past 4 or 5 years. So we're a software company and creative agency, best known for the Jadu platform, which is a low-code, web-based platform for digital service delivery. And the platform's made up of a content management system, a forms builder, a customer relationship management system, and a document portal. As a team, we are a distributed team. We're remote first, and there's just under 100 of us at the moment, so a relatively small team. And our primary objective is really to make our platform ideally the most accessible of its kind, and really to deliver the best possible accessible experience for the user. And I'm just going to check in case there's anyone waiting. I can't see anyone. That's great. So I will carry on. So talking about users then, a little bit about our users. The platform's used by hundreds of local governments and other organisations throughout the UK, the US and Australia. And day to day, millions of people use Jadu-powered sites. We also have thousands of what we call control centre users. So these are people that are logging into the platform, creating content and building out digital services. Almost all of our customers legally have to meet either things like WCAG 2.1 or 2.2, and this is due to laws like the public sector bodies accessibility regulations, Section 508 in the States, and more recently ADA in the States as well. And it's kind of worth noting as well that our software needs to be accessible, both the control center aspect, the admin area, the front end, the websites that kind of serve the end users, but we also need to allow for the creation of accessible content too. So we have to consider things like the authoring tool, accessibility guidelines, in addition to WCAG. So let's rewind kind of 4 years ago. We wanted our software to not only be conformant with WCAG, but also to offer the best possible accessible experience, and ideally be the most accessible platform of its kind. And we believed that the way to do that was by embedding accessibility into every aspect of the organisation, and ultimately that meant the goal of creating a company-wide culture focused on accessibility. So to give you an idea of where we started, we weren't necessarily in a bad place, but we knew we could do better. So we had a proven track record of delivering WCAG conformant websites and software. And we were really lucky, really, to have a CEO and founder who had a big passion for accessibility and was really keen to push accessibility forward and push the boundaries of accessibility within our platform. That was a huge accelerant for us, really, along this entire journey, and we'll touch on that in a few places in the following slides. We also had a handful of internal experts that were scattered amongst different teams, but we had no dedicated accessibility team or centralised resource. Knowledge levels across the team were a little bit inconsistent, and some of that was due to fairly ad hoc or irregular accessibility training. And at the time, kind of 4 or 5 years ago, we were more focused on conformance. We'd had things like the public sector bodies accessibility regulations in the UK, where, because the majority of our customers are local government, there's a huge drive on conformance. So at this time, we were more focused on WCAG conformance. So kind of working backwards from that goal of creating this culture of accessibility, we started to break things down, and we knew we wanted to go further and really embrace accessibility and embed it into everything we did and position it as a core value for our organisation. We wanted to increase empathy, support and buy-in across the teams, and really build relationships and collaboration across teams from an accessibility point of view. We knew we needed to increase internal education and training and really expand internal resources for people to kind of fall back on. We wanted to have a centralised accessibility approach, which allowed us to kind of push beyond WCAG conformance, and we knew that we needed to take stock of the entire platform, and that we also wanted to measure progress as we went down this journey. So again, rewinding kind of 4 or 5 years ago, the following slides are going to give you a high-level overview to the approach that we took, broken down into practical steps. So the first thing we really did was to lean on that board level support. So I mentioned earlier that we're really lucky to have a founder and a CEO who's always been really passionate about accessibility and actively wanted to kind of push the limits of accessibility within our platform. So that kind of gave us that board level commitment, which again is a huge accelerant. You know, it's talked a lot about in the industry. If you've got that leadership buy-in, it's makes things so much easier. That allowed us to kind of create this overall business mission and kind of primary business objective of making our platform the most accessible of its kind, and delivering the best possible accessible experience for the user. So being the most accessible of its kind, it's certainly blue sky thinking, but it's a goal that's quite important to us, and it helps us ensure that accessibility is really front and centre and considered in everything that we do. So that primary objective allowed us to kind of trickle down into team level objectives and individual objectives as well. So everyone at Jadu has a personal objective that's directly related to accessibility and implementing accessibility and contributing to the accessibility of the platform. It also gave us funding for roles, technology and professional development. The next thing we did was to create a dedicated accessibility team. And the first thing that we did in the team was to create what we call the Jadu Accessibility Guidelines. So these guidelines are kind of an internal knowledge. It's many things really. It's an internal knowledge base. It's a standard, and it's comprised of technical and non-technical guides and documentation, patterns, components, testing methodologies, and it incorporates WCAG 2.2, some AAA success criteria, and many best practices above and beyond WCAG. So the accessibility team was then the initial contact point for all things accessibility related, while we built resources and worked to increase knowledge across the team. And we also supported, obviously, the wider team and our customers, which many of them are on their own accessibility journey. So it was really about kind of building resource, supporting the team, and empowering others through support and resources. So process-wise, lots of change process-wise. We had a real shift left, and we introduced accessibility touch points or checkpoints at various points in the product development lifecycle. For example, really early on at the initial scoping and research stage, design, development, testing, and post go live. And it's something that we're constantly trying to iterate as well. We revisited the foundations. We wanted to ensure that the internal design systems that we have and component libraries and things like pre-built themes and pages were all accessible as well. We tried to position it at the core of engineering decisions. So any discussions around product roadmaps, feature enhancements, feature development, accessibility is always included as one of the must-be-dones at those stages. And to get commitment from teams as well, we also introduced accessibility into the Agile definition of done. Lots of work around education and internal training as well. So we introduced new starter training. So everyone who joins Jadu has a 3-hour session on titled An Introduction to Accessibility, where we talk about the moral aspect, the legal aspect, our commitment to our customers. We introduce them to standards like WCAG and other best practices, and equip them with a fairly basic set of kind of best practices and tests that they can use regardless of their role. We also added role-specific training for designers, developers, testers, and content creators, where we can really kind of drill into the detail on what's required for those roles. And we repeat those once a quarter as well to try and ensure that that knowledge is kept up to date, and if there's been any changes in our internal standards, that these are communicated as well. One of the really powerful things I think we've done as well is we've had a couple of lived experience guest speakers from AbilityNet that have spoken at our internal team events and also at our customer conferences. And these have been really, really powerful. I think as a software company, it's quite easy to get kind of bogged down by the technical aspects of accessibility. But bringing it back to the user, bringing it back to solving real problems for real people can be a real eye opener and really validate the efforts that the team's putting in. Other things that we've done are things like empathy labs, but also, it's not always the big things that can make the most impact as well. Smaller things as well, like detailed accessibility expectations and specifications in like JIRA tickets, bug impact, accessibility bug impact descriptions in JIRA tickets as well. I think the more we can talk about accessibility and the more that it's in front of people, and the better, the more it's considered. So around a year ago, we launched our internal champions network, which is made up of people from all over the organisation, real spread of roles, who are interested in and passionate about accessibility. So we have a bi-monthly meetup, which is open to everyone. Everyone's free to attend. And the structure that we use, so we have the first hour for dedicated training, and we allow the attendees to kind of vote for the topic of training as well. So we're quite heavy on training. So we've got that new starter training, we've got the role specific training, but champions kind of allows us to have this extra layer of quite tailored training, depending on what people are voting for and what people would like to learn about. And what's often interesting as well is you see people vote for topics that they may not necessarily consider or come across during their day-to-day role. So again, it's given us that extra layer. And then the second hour is really just open discussion, questions, more of a fireside chat, talking about perhaps issues that we've seen raised internally or issues that customers have reported, and just generally kind of encouraging open discussion and peer support. Champions meetups are really great for kind of internally building cross-departmental knowledge and relationships, and obviously it allows champions to feed back their findings and what they've learned to their team and really champion it in their day-to-day role, whether it's in meetings or just team discussions. All our champion sessions are recorded and shared with the wider team as well for people to reference. So resources and support, obviously quite a major part of it as well. We've got that dedicated accessibility team. We've got our internal Jadu accessibility guidelines, so that knowledge base and pattern library. We've got the standard stuff, the area specific checklists and guides, but we're really focused on a standardized approach to accessibility testing, because we have various product teams, various project teams, different testing teams, etc. Things like just encouraging general discussion and general accessibility support. So we've got dedicated Slack channels for accessibility and for the Champions Network. And we try and encourage a kind of a culture of no silly questions. So some aspects of accessibility can be quite technical, and the question that someone may want to answer, or ask rather, many other people may be wanting to know the answer to that. So yeah, no silly questions, open discussion, and it works well.
James, there's a question popped up from Romana.
Okay, yeah, I think we've got some time at the end, so can we leave questions to the end? Is that all right? Is it in the chat?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, yeah, I can see the question there. Yeah, definitely pick that up at the end. I think we've got someone in the waiting room as well. I'm just going to admit them. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, sorry. So yeah, lots of auditing, lots of testing, lots of fixing. We went on quite a journey. We went through our design systems, our component libraries. We have things like out-of-the-box themes that customers can use, different templates, and we wanted to really kind of investigate all of these things, really go back to the basics, really revisit the foundations of everything we do and make sure things are as accessible as they could be. And it's something we're still working on. There are hundreds of UIs across the platform, which we are slowly progressing through and fixing where necessary. We've done lots of manual testing, with assisted technology, automated testing, where it's appropriate, using the standard industry tools, but also build stage tools as well. So when developers commit a fix and push it to an environment, we have our normal kind of unit tests and things like that, but we also have automated accessibility tests as well. Bear with me, my slides don't want to seem to progress. There we go. Yeah, kind of on the same subject of testing and auditing, we do a lot of monitoring and measuring of the impact of our accessibility progress, if you like. We do periodic, in-depth manual accessibility audits of our products, our design systems, and again, component libraries. User testing, feedback, feature requests. We're quite fortunate in that many of our customers are quite passionate about accessibility, and obviously a lot of the time they get feedback from their end users, which is often the public citizens. So they're feeding back. We get feature requests, support tickets. All these areas are kind of really useful sources of information and things that we can investigate, people we can reach out to expand upon on issues that have been found. And also external audits. So lots of our customers, with them being in the public sector, a lot of them are local government. Lots of these organisations get audited by third parties, so accessibility audits from third parties. Sometimes this is like the GDS monitoring team, who kind of police, if you like, accessibility of the public sector. Other times, customers will commission third-party accessibility audits of their site, which we've created, and parts of our platform. So these are all really useful sources of information for us above and beyond our own auditing and testing. We also try and proactively monitor our customer sites for accessibility issues as well, using automated tools. We use the Silk Tide tool quite a lot for that. So looking ahead, things that we're going to be focusing on over this coming year. There's a real increase in focus on user testing at the moment. We're working with some of our partners to kind of formalise that and expand it across the platform. We want to formalise, and I'm not sure if formalise is the best word, but we want to structure our champions network a little better. At the moment, it's quite relaxed. We'd like to introduce some form of either internal accreditation or probably more likely external accreditation. So things like the IAAP certifications, that type of thing. We have in the past explored the accessibility ISO, the 30071-1. That's something we are likely going to circle back around to this year. Quite a big subject, but essentially an ISO that focuses on an organisation's accessibility maturity. We're excited about new ways of solving problems as well. AI for platform content creators, expanding in product accessibility tools, and really kind of focusing on the internal side as well. So internal communications, things that we do on social media, documents that every business has flying around. These are all areas that we want to improve our internal accessibility focus on. Just wary of time. Yeah, we're okay. So that was a really quick overview of some of the major changes that we've made over the past 4 or 5 years. I hope there was some kind of takeaway for you there. But I'd really like to emphasise that the magic for us has really happened when you've got that combination of education, training, resources for people to lean on, people who are passionate about accessibility and the culture align. We're seeing some really amazing measurable results from embedding accessibility into the culture and into everything that we do across the platform. So some kind of lessons learned then, so things that we have discovered throughout this journey. Something that's talked about a lot, that I think is fairly commonly accepted, is that buy-in and support from leadership is absolutely crucial. If you've got that early on, it's a great accelerant into expanding your accessibility coverage and the support that you'll have. We were really lucky that we had a CEO that was already passionate about accessibility and wanted to push it forward. But I appreciate for some people that can be quite challenging. Having an accessibility team is great. It's a huge step forward. It's a really valuable resource, but we can't be everywhere at once. So having resources for people to fall back on, training and other advocates within the organisation, champions, is really critical. And we try and make it everyone's responsibility. We want as many people as possible to be an expert within their day-to-day roles when it comes to accessibility. And again, it's been said before, but accessibility really shines when it's involved in the entire process. So the early kick-off meetings, the project feature planning, design, development, testing, etc. Really, really important. And that's, again, where the magic happens. I think it's about getting that kind of seat at the table, and that's where your champions network comes in as well. So having people within the organisation that are passionate about accessibility, that the knowledge is growing, and then can take that knowledge to their day-to-day meetings, their project kickoff meetings, their interactions with customers, and just everything, And these champions likely already exist in your team as well. They may not necessarily know a great deal about accessibility, but they might be passionate about it and want to advocate for it. So it's about getting these people together, finding the people, and where possible, empowering them. Open discussion, again, mentioned it multiple times, really important. I think the more accessibility is talked about, the better, the more it's out there, people are aware of it, it's mentioned. We have multiple Slack channels, champions meetups, champions discussions, having an accessible accessibility team, so one that you're confident in reaching out to, asking for help, etc. But also the small things, so things like, if you use Jira tickets for bugs and feature development, code reviews, that type of thing, wherever we can talk about accessibility is great. And making things measurable as well, it doesn't have to be complicated metrics and KPIs and things like that, but a simple example is just having developer training, accessibility training for developers. That should result in fewer issues raised when testing, and it does. We've certainly seen that. Overall, it takes time and persistence. You've got to celebrate the small wins, and as is often kind of said in the industry, take the progress over perfection. But certainly aim for perfection, or at least that's what we're doing. Or maybe not perfection, but we're aiming for the stars. So where are we now? We are still on the journey. We've not solved all the problems. We're not perfect, but we are constantly improving, and there's always room for improvement. We've got those measurable results. We've seen a reduction in issues raised internally via our support system and our support team. External audits, far fewer issues, if any, and tracking kind of the accessibility of our sites. I mentioned this earlier. We've seen a real impact we use the Silk Tide Index, for example, to track some of our council customers and see how their accessibility scoring has changed. And obviously, it's just from automated tests, so it doesn't cover all the manual aspect of accessibility testing. But it's a good indicator of how accessibility is improving. We've got that growing accessibility team. We've got a centralised approach and fairly robust centralised resources and a standard for accessibility. Knowledge across the team is growing. Collaboration across different teams is going in the right direction as well. And we are, for me, which is the most important thing, focusing more on the user as opposed to just conformance. So we're going above and beyond, and really trying to bring it back to solving real problems for real people. So I thought it'd be beneficial for you to hear from my colleague Catriona. So I've been with Jadu coming up to 11 years. So all the kind of change that I've discussed there, I've kind of seen and been involved with. But Catriona joined us back in April this year as an accessibility specialist. So I thought it would be nice for you to hear from someone who's fairly new to the business and has come in when a lot of these cultural changes have been in place. So Catriona, can I pass over to you?
You can indeed. So a bit of background about me. I started off in the publishing industry, one of the many industries that's fallen under the scope of the upcoming European Accessibility Act. And already being passionate about removing barriers from technology, and now with legal backing, I took the role of accessibility champion into my day job, which was enough to satisfy higher ups then, who just saw it as a one-off tick box. And whilst I'm very proud of the things I managed to achieve there, establishing business cases and roadmaps, setting up cross-departmental working group, gathering the passion of some champions, we never managed to gain that initial buy-in of leadership, who were too focused on sidelining accessibility over the day-to-day. And these blockers and mindsets filter down, and progress slowed as budget and priorities shifted. And then there was also burnout, as many here probably felt. It's a real challenge keeping accessibility as a top priority whilst you're balancing the demands of a daily role. And personally, I felt I'd reached the limits of my knowledge as the sole accessibility specialist. I lacked the time to learn and develop, and I wanted a full-time role where I could focus on learning and growing within a dedicated accessibility team. So I was thrilled when I saw that Jadu were looking for an accessibility specialist as part of their growing accessibility team. Knowing the landscape, it's very actually rare to see a mid-level accessibility role. Too many places have the mindset of hiring for one senior role, but giving them the burden of 3 jobs in one to solve all of their problems and tick that box. So beyond the clear dedication to accessibility on the job role, it was also really rare to see a job advert emphasising internal and external training and development. And the focus on collaboration, knowledge and resource sharing and inclusivity was also evident from the large number of accessibility-focused blogs, webinars, and the shared library of resources for customers on the website. And having been part of the team for 6 months now, it's clear that an underlying culture is there to back this up. As James has said, knowledge and resource sharing is encouraged and there are no silly questions. It's all open discussion in champion sessions and on Slack channels, keeping the learning ongoing. And having that culture fostered from the very initial new starter training through to focusing on baking it into every step means that it's never a fight for accessibility. It's just seen as a given priority across teams and leadership, and we work together, auditing throughout the development process because people care about the end user. As our public sector and local government sites cater to all abilities and backgrounds, we know that we need to provide the best possible accessible experience for the user. And having a supportive, curious and accessible culture behind our platform means that it's always seen and celebrated as an ongoing goal, which in my experience is pretty special. Back to you, James.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catriona. Okay, so I think we're pretty much at the end now. Just one final slide. Just checking I have unmuted, which I have. Yeah, that's good. Just wanted to leave you with some things that you may already be aware of. You know, they're not necessarily anything new, but just some pointers on what, you know, if you're starting this journey, things that can kind of help you along the way. I think the first thing that's really useful is exploring the accessibility maturity model. So AbilityNet have one, a digital accessibility maturity model, they call it DAM. Definitely check that out. Really useful for kind of taking stock of where your organisation is as of now and what weak points you may have when it comes to accessibility. And yeah, really interesting, and it kind of highlights some things that you might not necessarily be aware of. So yeah, very, very useful. Kind of said before, you know, to kind of influence change, you need to have accessibility, or accessibility needs to have a seat at the table. So talk about accessibility a lot. If you've got a champions network, fantastic. Ours is relatively new, but we're already seeing some great benefits from having it. But you know, even if it's just you and you're advocating for accessibility, and I've been there in the past, you know, join the meetings, you know, talk about it with passion. Be annoying, you know, and bring it to people's attention, you know, because if it's not there already, it certainly should be. Some more practical things, perhaps, you know, starting off early in the stage, early in the process with things like design reviews, design clinics, having time that people can perhaps book with you, or that you're open to review designs. Obviously, there's more formal ways of doing it as well. Fantastic, because if you can catch that, it's not the be all and end all, but if you catch them early on in the design stage, then it certainly gives you a huge advantage. Users as well, you know, you can often find really great accessibility related feedback in some places that you might not necessarily realize. So things like issues that have been raised. Obviously, if it's an accessibility issue, you know, it should hopefully come to someone that's going to deal with that. But even in support tickets, however your end users, whatever they may look like, feeds information back to you. There's often lots of information there to be found. Support tickets, customer feedback, obviously more formal things like user testing, all really important. Role-specific training, really important in my mind, even more so if you can sprinkle in a little bit of assistive technology training as well. For example, your developers, if your developers can fire up a screen reader, have a basic understanding of keyboard navigation, and navigate a page using a screen reader, maybe using VoiceOver, and they can use the rotor, the basics. Hugely important. Just on that, DQ have some fantastic kind of screen reader cheat sheets, which we use internally quite a bit as well. So certainly check them out. Raising awareness, so lived experience speakers, we've had quite a few of these, really important, really opens people's eyes to accessibility. Again, easy to get kind of bogged down with the technical aspect of it sometimes, certainly as a software company. So yeah, 100% recommend those. Open discussion, we've covered lots, talk about accessibility as much as possible, and start a champions network. If you've not already got one, people that are passionate about accessibility are likely already out there. So it's just a case of finding them and bringing people together. And when my slides will work, yeah, that's it really. That brings us to an end. So I hope you enjoyed learning about our journey. Lots of information crammed into those slides, so I appreciate there's kind of a lot to cover, and it was only really a high-level overview of what we've done. But yeah, hopefully it was of value. I think we've got some time for questions. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through the chats and catch up, because I've not been looking at the chat, so bear with me a second. Yeah, so the first question about role-specific training. Did you do this in-house, and can you talk a little bit more about what it involves? Yes, this was something that we developed in-house. We took inspiration from elsewhere, but yeah, largely in-house, based on the kind of weaknesses that we felt we had around certain things, along with the kind of the basics for that role. So if we take developer training for an example, our developers, we're working in normal web technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. So we want those developers to be knowledgeable about all the kind of technical aspects of using that stack, things like ARIA, keyboard navigation, basic screen reader usage, awareness of other things like voice control software, things like Dragon. So yeah, it was very much tailored to where we felt we needed to expand knowledge. There are lots of resources out there for this type of thing. It was just over a period of time we could see where common themes were developing and the areas that we needed to address. So yeah, it was. Hopefully that answers the question, but yes, it was internally developed. Let me just find the next question. Bear with me a second. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the early stages of implementation, and how did you address them? Good question. So I guess for us, one of our challenges is that our platform has been in development for many years. There's always that element of technical debt, or kind of dustier corners, if you like. And the platform's quite huge. There are literally hundreds of UIs, different states, error states, modals, forms. We have some quite complex UIs as well for example, building out forms and all the kind of considerations that go with that. So I think the first thing was really to take stock of what we had. We did a non-accessibility related audit, where we took stock of and literally listed every single UI. We cross-referenced that with every single component that was used within those UIs. different states. So whether they had, for example, a modal, whether they had an error state, whether they had, you know, other things. And that took a considerable amount of time, but the value that we gained from that, we had a complete list of all the UIs. We could cross-reference that with all the components, and really kind of set the scene for what we needed to do from an accessibility point of view, because we use internal component libraries. So we knew that if we found that this component was used in 20 different UIs, and there was a problem with that component, we knew that if we fixed that in the component library and then released that and pulled it into the software, then, you know, we could go back in and check, and those issues would be resolved. There were the other ones as well, but I would say for us the scale of the challenge initially was one of the biggest challenges, because the size of the software, and sometimes the complexity of the software as well. It's enterprise level software, you know. It's definitely challenging. Let me find another question. How are we for time? I think we've got a couple of minutes left. So, how far did you go with resource creation, as there's so much out there already? Is there a risk of creating duplicate resources and therefore an overhead in keeping it up to date? Yeah, really, really great question. Yes, there is. The way that we approached it is we wanted to have an internal standard for accessibility, which was more than just we meet WCAG X. We knew a lot of our customers, you know, legally, again, they have to meet WCAG 2.2 AA typically, but there's so much more you can do, obviously, above and beyond that. And we wanted to incorporate that. We wanted to move away from just making websites and software that was AA compliant, and that kind of slotted into nicely with us trying to with us having our own standard. Basically, we wanted to define what accessibility at Jadu should look like. So WCAG is certainly a part of that, but there are all these best practices. There were certain AAA success criteria we wanted to bring in as well, and we really wanted to kind of shape what that looked like, both from a technical and a non-technical point of view. So we have a real spread of guides on content creation, kind of from a non-technical point of view, but then we have the hardcore technical guides on different ARIA patterns and things like that. And sometimes they will point off to like the official ARIA spec or the ARIA patterns. Other times we will have our own take on them through things that we've learned from our users, user testing and feedback, etc. It's internally hosted. It's essentially just a large knowledge base, like a dedicated website full of. It's a little bit similar to the, if you're familiar with the .gov UK, the GDS components site, similar in some respects to that. Yeah, just a follow-up question to that one. So myself coming from within a product team, do you think centralized accessibility teams work better for affecting accessibility improvements on a product, or has this created a boundary, some more distance between accessibility and design and build teams? No, not at all. I would say that the accessibility team at Jadu has a great relationship with our product teams, our designers, developers, testers, and I'm not being paid to say that. It's the honest truth. Yeah, I guess it's down to. I saw a great talk years ago about accessibility, and I've forgotten the chap's name that did it, but he, I think he hit it on the nail when he said it's about empowering people, not policing. And because we have quite a holistic approach, we've got, you know, individual objectives that we all have to contribute towards accessibility. We've got those centralized resources, the guidelines, the internal guidelines, that standard. Everyone is pushed to take accessibility forward, both within the product and on a cultural level with peer support and everything else. So no, I think if anything, we work really well together. You know, you know, sometimes you have to be tactical in the feedback that you give. But no, I think we complement each other enough, and we've got those resources as well. So if there are questions, we don't necessarily have to go into a vast amount of detail. We can point them off to certain components and things. And because we're using them design system, them component libraries, everything's kind of coming from the bottom to the top, you know, in terms of the atomic design of accessibility, if you like. Right, there's quite a few questions coming in. I'm going to just skip through to the more recent one. My chat is jumping all over, so it's quite difficult to navigate the questions. Every time I try and scroll to one, it jumps back to the top. I think we've, from what I can tell, forgive me if we haven't, but I think we've pretty much covered all the questions, at least that I can see without my chat window jumping around. So, yeah, any other questions? I think we're just slightly over on time, so I think we're, yeah, people are dropping off. Okay, brilliant. Well, I really hope that was of value. Thank you so much for attending and listening to me talk for 45 minutes. So I am there in person tomorrow. If you've got any questions and you're there as well, please do come and say hello. We're both there. We'd love to meet you. So thank you very much. Take care.